Hello, I'm Terry McDermott, Director of Careers and Head of Oxbridge, and thank you for joining me for this new evening that we're doing this year for the first time. I put it in place this year for a few reasons. One is just to introduce the career department and our work and our resources and things we can do for you and your children. Also to introduce the Morrisby profile, which your daughters did on Tuesday, a version of it, a basic version of it, which was aspirations focused, and also possibly to dispel some misunderstandings that have come up over various years about particularly the Morrisby profile, and also why we're talking about careers so early on in your daughter's school career. So that's the rationale. So first of all, who are we? This is the careers team. It's me. I'm also head of Oxbridge, so I look after our Oxbridge programme. There's Mrs. Leckie, who's assistant director of careers and who has particular responsibility for work experience, and Miss Parsons. So we're quite a big, well-resourced team, able to support you well. So don't feel free to reach out to us. Sometimes those lower down the school don't. But if you have got a question, don't be frightened to get in touch. Where are we? We're in the top of the sixth form building in the study area, room 627, and you can contact us at that email. With parents, we can arrange a Teams meeting or answer your questions via email. And with students, you can either visit us or we can arrange a Teams meeting. So in terms of what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the PSHE, which included the Morrisby profile on Tuesday, then a bit more detailed feedback on what the Morrisby profile is. So if there are students watching and the first few slides look familiar, bear with, because it will be new stuff to you after that. So please don't say, oh, I've seen all of this before. You might have seen the first few slides, you won't have seen those afterwards. And then finally, I'll just talk to you a little bit about what we do in the careers department and some things about our outcomes to reassure you that we know what we're doing and your daughters are in good hands with us. So in terms of the PSHE on Tuesday, we started off by asking your daughters, what is a career and when do you start your career? And this was because often and it's linked to the thing I said about in the past, some people have said to us, why are you talking about careers in year 7? And often I think that's because people think of it as jobs. And actually, careers is much more than that. And in fact, your daughters have already commenced their careers. They made a big career decision. You made a big career decision when you chose to come to Surbiton High School. And there will be further career decisions in the next few years, GCSEs, A-levels, degree choice, and then eventually, of course, career choices or job choices. Careers is also about the skills you develop and how you develop them, for example, through volunteering, and reflecting on your values, your interests over time. And that's something I'm going to come back to later when I start talking about the Morrisby. And this is important because, as I pointed out to your daughters, probably about 50% of them will go on to do careers that haven't even been invented yet. I gave them the examples of when I was at school, there was no such thing as a social media influencer or a social media manager or Facebook, or all the careers related to Google and analytics and all these different areas. So it's often about not making career decisions, choosing a particular job. It's about developing the skills so you're equipped for the jobs of the future. And I have to say, the year 7s this year, more than any other I've seen, were really on board with this and really seem to understand these issues, even at their young age. I also introduced the concept of a lot of choice. There's a lot of choice out there, and so that's why it's important over time, not now, but over time, to just keep on exploring, remain curious about what's out there. And with that issue around skills in mind, as we talked about sort of technical skills and general skills, transferable skills, in order to enter and succeed in careers that already exist and the careers of the future that don't. So we talked about things like technical skills, programming, accounting, whatever that might be, and transferable skills that are relevant to any career. And we also flagged that up in reference to the learning habits, because this is something they're working on already, and maybe it gives a rationale for why we have the learning habits. Now, I'm mindful that some students sometimes get they feel like there's a pressure to make these decisions now, when of course there aren't. So it was also about reassuring them that over the course of their 5-7 years at Surbiton, there's a lot of support available. There's a program that scaffolds year on year, builds year on year, and you will be well looked after in making these decisions and doing the right things when you need to do them. So you don't need to worry about them now. And I've emphasised the point that career management is something you'll be doing your whole life. So the first step from the careers department's point of view with this was the Morrisby profile, the interest questionnaire that you do. And I just want to emphasise that the Morrisby profile is something that the students will do again when they are older, a much more comprehensive version of it, which would contain aptitude tests and personality tests. But at this stage, they are too young to do those sorts of tests, so they just did an interest-based questionnaire. So it's sort of like a Morrisby light version of the profile, but when they get into year 10, the end of year 10, they will do a fuller version. So who are Morrisby? They've been knocking around for 50 years. Maybe some of the parents on this call will have done it themselves. The Morrisby profile is BPS accredited, British Psychological Society accredited, which means that in giving its career guidance, that has been tested by the British Psychological Society. It's been through robust validation and verification processes, and it's used by a lot of well-known schools. And interestingly, all the state schools in the Australian state of Victoria, randomly, very enlightened, our Australian brothers and sisters. So what did the students have to do? They answered a questionnaire like this, where they were asked lots of questions, and they had to indicate whether they were very interested, a bit interested, not interested, or not at all interested. And there were, and this went on for probably about 20 minutes. And then at the end of that, it generated a personalised web space for your daughter. She is able to give you access to that web space, but it is up to her. And I'm afraid I don't have any authority over this. This is GDPR rules or whatever the compliance rules might be from Morrisby. So if you would like access to your daughter's Morrisby, she can do that by going to the parental access panel, which is on the home page if you scroll down. So if you go to the About Me tab, you've got there different breakdowns of her results, and what I want to emphasize is not to leap towards the career suggestions straight away, because particularly at this age, it's more about reflecting on yourself. Who are you? And thinking about over time, how do you test out what is presented here? So for example, here it summarizes your interests in terms of people, information and things, and then breaks that down. So with people, is it more career orientated? You might be interested in advising or persuading. And below, this text here is all specific to the student. Okay, and it interprets these results for you. But the main thing for the student to understand is over time, not in year 7 necessarily, but over time, to what extent does their self-reflection, their own discovery journey through things like work experience, volunteering, co-curricular, their subjects, teach them about how accurate this is. And because these things do change, for example, you might sign up for the after school club with elderly local residents that takes place on a Tuesday. It's not running at the moment, but hopefully when things have improved, that it will be restarted again. if you went to that, you might find that your view on care might change, and you can retake your questionnaire in light of your changing interests. So the Morrisby profile is adaptable, and you don't need to come to us. You can retake it as many times as you like. The questionnaire also produced information on work style. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory. Or one thing to be aware of, this section here, specialist interests, these are interests where there's a particular talent that the Morrisby can't measure. And even when you do in year 10, the more bells and whistles Morrisby with aptitude tests and the rest of it, these specialist interests are not ones that the Morrisby can measure. So things like performing arts, art and design, music, those sorts of things. Those are things that you would have to, from other pursuits in life, whether that's drama or your work in the art department, work out for yourself. So your work style, this now looks at the kind of organizations you might want to work in and what sort of role. So you're more large organization, more leaning towards sort of smaller organization, being self-employed, more a supporter, or more of a leader, and you're placed on this this spectrum here. And again, with these things, it's all about reflecting. You might, over time, where you are, depending on the things you get involved with, may change. And by retaking the questionnaire, that would hopefully be reflected there. Likewise, it asks questions about where you wanted to work, outdoors, indoors, dealing with the public, being physically active. We often find that students say they don't want to work in offices. So you'll notice, you don't be surprised if it says this bar here is relatively low. I think students have a preconception that office work is boring. So over time, particularly through work experience, students might learn that indoor that actually it might be more interesting than they think working in an indoors environment. It's more about what they're doing. The final two sections here, the priorities and the study interests, these require you to take extra additional questionnaires. So if your daughter doesn't have any readings here, just click on the priorities and then click next, and a questionnaire will come up there for both of those. So priorities and study interests. And again, these are things that you can retake the questionnaire as many times as you wish. So now if you go to my choices, this is where the career suggestions are. So I just want to explain a few things about this, because in the past that there have been some misunderstandings which have resulted in maybe sometimes students being disappointed, and it wasn't, it was due to misunderstanding. It usually centers around this section here. So you can select your qualification level. And what sometimes happened is, even though we gave students instructions on this, they would select the lowest qualification level, which then impacted on their career suggestions. So what we told your daughter to do was to select the highest qualification level, and that would give them the sorts of career suggestions that typically our students at Surbiton go on to do, that sort of level. It's not a bad idea to play with those just to see what happens to your career suggestions. So it's using the same interest data, but what happens when you vary the qualification levels. And also do be aware that you can focus on apprenticeships. Most Surbiton students go on to university, but every year, given the quality of school leaver programs that are now available with many top employers, there is the apprenticeship school leaver route with many top employers. So you have got that option to look at qualification routes if you were to do an apprenticeship school leaver program. These favourites here, so what you will initially, if you don't interact with your choices here, these favourites here, you will not have that at the top. You will have a list of career suggestions. If you click the heart, if you click the career suggestion, explore it and like it and click the heart, it will go into your favourites, okay, as ones you're particularly keen on exploring. Anything that you favourite but is not in your career suggestions, so there is a bar below the career suggestions where you can explore other careers that maybe weren't suggested, that will also join your favorites, and you can see that by this little blue icon here, new entrant. Okay, so I looked up fashion model because I thought I might be quite well qualified for that, and that's now in my career suggestions. But that was not suggested by the actual program. It's something that I added myself. Likewise, you can bin through these icons here your actual allocated career suggestions. And those ones, if you bin a career suggestion which was allocated to you, that will go in your binned folder there. So you parents can, if your daughter interacts a lot with this and bins a lot of careers, you can see what was binned here. Another function here. By the way, you can ask any questions. I find it hard to present and to keep track of the questions, but I'll allow some time at the end for questions. So feel free to write any in the Q&A, and I'll deal with them through the presentation if I can, but if not, at the end. And then here it says requirement status, and this will give you information on what qualifications are required to get into these particular professions. So particular GCSEs, particular A-levels, particular careers. Are there any questions about that? So one thing we asked your daughters was, why are these just your career suggestions? And what other factors beyond just interest, aspiration might be important? And these were some of the things that they came up with. So as I've said before, this does not look at aptitudes at this stage. Some aptitudes will be looked at in year 10 with with the fuller, longer Morrisby that has aptitude and personality assessments. But at this stage, we just looked at aspirations and interests. And as I've said before, the interests themselves can vary over time. So they were asked why, and many of them, despite being in year 7, came up with some very good suggestions, like they spoke to someone who did that career, it didn't sound as interesting, or it sounded more interesting. They did work experience, they maybe did some volunteering, whether that be at a hospice or at a veterinary clinic or something like that, that resulted in their interest changing over time. So they came up with a lot of these suggestions themselves. And I would recommend, when Friendship Hour restarts, so Friendship Hour is the session that takes place after school on a Tuesday, that is a really good thing for anyone thinking about a healthcare-based career like medicine to go to work out whether they have whether they have the potential to develop some of the skills that medical schools in due course will be looking for. It's a good thing to do, and it's also, obviously something that our community really values. So for each career suggestion, they can be clicked, and I just want to show that you can, what happens when you do this. You're given an overview of the career, you're given information on the routes into it. Are there any particular GCSEs? Generally, the answer is no. Generally, students really don't need to worry too much about the GCSE choice issue. It more or less takes care of itself if you focus on what you enjoy and what you're interested in. There are very few career-related decisions that are made at GCSE time, although you will get lots of help with that when the time comes. And then there's information at A-levels, degrees, alternative routes in, non-degree routes in to get into a particular career. And then there's information on related careers, and then further resources. So these further resources are often very good for exploring careers in a bit more depth. For particular business careers, there's often links to directories of employers in those areas who might be available for work experience, professional bodies which might have career events that the student could go to, or resources for exploring that career. Now, in terms of what we do in the careers department, this is a selection of our interventions and the things we'll be doing over time. So at the heart of our provision is interviews, one-on-one, because frankly, when group activities, while they are helpful, these are very personal decisions, and it's a very personal process. And we're very lucky to have a very well-resourced careers department where we can interview all students at least twice, but we are able to see you on a as needs basis if you contact us. We then also have PSHE, so as part of the personal social health education program in every year group. So as part of PSHE, they did the Morrisby profile on Tuesday, and then in year 8 they will do a careers competition where they will use their Morrisby in more depth. And if they do a healthcare based entry, this will be entered into the national Step into the NHS competition. And I'm delighted to say that we are former national winners of this. In year 9, there will be GCSE related activities to ensure that any career issues are dealt with in their GCSE choices, but as I said, that is generally not an issue. In year 10, we look at applications, CVs, and reflection on skills, and then crucially, that is when students do the full Morrisby. And then in year 11, all students go off to do work experience. Ms. Leckie looks after that, so you can contact Ms. Leckie if you want more information about work experience. And we don't just run work experience, there's a build up to it, what you're trying to get out of it, how to explore it, and then there's a reflection on what was learnt from it. And students often, it's a very illuminating time for them, and their ideas do shift once they've had some work experience in year 11. We also run career events, so there are career talks, working lunches. Those have been put on hold during the pandemic, but we hope to start those soon again. And there is the University Careers Fair, which I think, Miss Leckie, do you want to post the date for that? I can't remember. I think it's September. Is it September?
Yes.
It is.
It's the 18th of September.
18th of September, that's a Saturday. So we have loads of universities come in. We have also lots of contacts come in to talk about different careers, and it's sort of set up as a fair. So do feel free to bring your daughters to that. And then, as I said, the work experience, every student in year 11 does work experience. Miss Leckie puts on considerable support for this, and Miss Leckie over the years has built up an excellent bank of opportunities. But we can, on an ad hoc basis, you can contact Miss Leckie for work experience in other year groups. That does tend to be in the sixth form, but there are a few careers, maybe things like veterinary, where you may consider work experience a little bit earlier. I'd say year 7 is pretty young, but you may consider it. Some people do some in year 9, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. In terms of keeping track on what we're doing and the events we're putting on, we send out a twice yearly careers newsletter. It's on the learning space in the careers section, and that has got information about what's coming up, and then it's also got contacts to things or links to things like supercurricular activities. So by supercurricular, I mean things above the curriculum that are academic. So that becomes more important as you're looking more towards university. However, what I would say is, if you do have spare time and you are really passionate about a particular subject, do have a look in that section. There's something called the Supercurricular Bible in there, and for all the possible subjects you can think of, both school subjects and non-school subjects, there are things that you can do above and beyond your studies. But there's no expectation you do that at this age at all. But if you're interested, maybe in your summer holidays and you're getting a bit bored, it's something you could have a look at. And then there's also information about careers, but also competitions. So most competitions, academic competitions or business-based competitions, are focused on the older year groups, but there are some for the year 7s. So do have a look in there, because there may be some things for younger year groups. And I'm now going to show you a few things about our longer term outcomes. And I suppose I'm showing you this not just to show off, but to reassure you that your daughters are in good hands when it comes to making the career decisions that they will make over the next few years. So we have around 90% of our students going to Russell Group or top 10 universities, circa 10% of our year 13s receiving Oxbridge offers, which is an improvement for us in recent years, and it's quite a contrast to what most independent schools have seen, which is a decline. 90 to 100% getting medical, veterinary or dental school offers, so that means at least the definition of 90 to 100% is at least one offer, because that's all you need. You only need one. And then there's also been significant success in specialist pathways such as art school, drama school, music conservatoire, architecture school, etc. And the different departments, for example, the art department, are very experienced at helping students applying to top art schools like St Martin's, top architecture schools like the Bartlett at UCL. So we're very well resourced in those respects. And we're also a school that's got very high value added. People often focus on league tables, and in league tables we're very high, obviously. But actually our value add, I'd say, is more important. And that is what the achievement of students relative to their ability. So at A level, for example, you can predict based on a student's GCSE results what A levels you anticipate them to get. And some schools underperform that and some schools outperform that. And our school in this region over the last 3 years has got the highest value added in that regard. And it's similar for GCSE. So what can you be doing now, year sevens? Just be curious, explore over time. There's no decisions required now. So you can explore your Morrisby profile and come back to it whenever you like, adapt your responses over time. Test out your ideas from the Morrisby profile and elsewhere through talking to your friends and family about yourself and what they do, taking part in co-curricular, signing up for any clubs that interest you, volunteering, potentially Friendship Hour, for example, and in due course, work experience. Do be careful of assumptions. Test out preconceptions. So often students have an idea about what they do like, what they don't like. Is that actually borne out by reality? So test out those assumptions. Please do keep an eye out for our careers newsletters, which are twice yearly, on info you can do, on things you can do. And if you need to, don't hesitate to contact us. So I've only got one question, I think, so far, which was about languages. Are there any questions in the questionnaire about the child's ability in foreign languages? I'm wondering if the profiling considers this and the related careers for good linguists. I think there are. I don't know there are literally thousands of questions because it adapts. I'd be surprised if there weren't. But certainly Surbiton's got a very strong track record in languages. I'm a big advocate for languages. I think languages degrees are they're really something I often say to students is that 2/3 of careers can be entered with any degree, including law, banking, all sorts of things. And languages has one of the advantages that it is relatively undersubscribed at university. So because particularly state schools don't do languages at A level so much. So when it comes to more competitive pathways like Oxbridge, if you really love languages, that can be a very fruitful avenue to explore. So if you're interested in languages, ancient or modern or both, I would encourage you to follow those interests up. Okay, unless there are, that was about half an hour. I know I advertised this an hour. I didn't anticipate it would take any longer than that, but unless there are any other questions, I'll give you a few moments. This presentation will be sent out as a link, so you'll be able to follow up. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you for attending, and I'll send this letter out with the link to this in due course. Thank you very much.